Imperial Lounge presents an icon.
Reggae dancehall by the beach. To be held at Imperial Lounge, 2 to 14 High Street, Margate Seafront, Kent, CT9, 180. To be held on the first Saturday of each month. Your host DJ Matt. Also rotating DJs, Roddy Boone, DJ Happy,
and Younger General.
Doors open 8 p.m. till late. Free entry all night. Music policy, reggae, dancehall, and a touch of soul. On the first Saturday of each month. Reggae dancehall by the beach. At the Imperial Lounge Margate. Do remember you can also get VIP and Shisha booking. More info on the World Jam Global website. That's www.worldjamglobal.com. Also www.imperialloungemargate.co.uk.
See you there.
It's the right thing you doing. Rebellious like Malcolm. 1, 2, 3, swing it.
Do you have an old sound tape or your favorite cassette tape that you want converted to CD or MP3 format? Do you need a demo CD, radio ad, a DJ, or even a sound system for your wedding, birthday, or special occasion? Then why not get in contact with KTR Records on 07931 152 448 or check out our website on www.ktrrecords.com. We have been in business since 2004 and also undertake community projects. So for your remixes, duplets and all your sound editing needs, why not contact KTR Records, official sponsor of World Jam Global Radio. KTR Records, coming your way.
I was terrified about sharing the vulnerabilities of people with difficulties reading and spelling words. However, I could see the value in sharing, and I have taken the time to make some notes about this in my book, Dyslexic: The Silent Difference. You can get your copy now at www.a1tribe.com or amazon.com or amazon.co.uk. Thank you again, everyone, for your support.
Do you like music like this?
Great music all the time.
Or like this?
The music you love.
Maybe this.
Great music that makes you want to turn up the volume loud.
Or life check like this.
Especially where human life is concerned. Surely, sooner or later, people will realize that lives actually matter.
Then you're in the right place. Keep it blocked to World Jam Global, where music is harmony.
Music 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah, you're my World Jam. Hotter than them.
See live schedule.
You see, it's here. You see. New feature coming from World Jam Global Radio in 2018. World Jam Global Top 10. To vote for your favorite artist, go to twitter.com/World Jam Global or facebook.com/World Jam Global. So pick the right track where you want to have in your car, at your house, a rock. At them.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Firstly, let me say a very big good night going out to good evening, going out to good afternoon, good morning. Going out to Yolanda McNair, Sandra Dawn, I see ya. Jeff Thomas Black, I see ya. We've got a top show lined up for you. Our guest, Shilo Wilson Phelps.
I paid for my crime.
Theme of today's show: somebody is lying. It's Saturday night at 6 o'clock. Oh well, it's 7 minutes past now.
Do or die. I had too many rivals.
And we are live on www.worldjamglobalradio.com.
There was not a man I couldn't.
You can find us on TuneIn. You can also find us now officially live on YouTube.
All over the street, I was getting money. Life is so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell.
So I'm just trying to do a couple of checks, just make sure that everything is okay.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
I'm gonna give you this P in a very short while. Stand by.
Drug dealer sold more drugs than Superfly, but I never got high on my own supply. I'm not proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent, I must admit.
Now just a few quick house rules before we go live.
Now sit back.
You can get us on www.worldjamglobalradio.com and click on the click here right at the top right hand side for global experience.
I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy.
You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Real Terminator.
You can get us on the TuneIn app.
I'd shoot you up and spit you out.
We have no control over what they do on Facebook nowadays, and some of the things that's been going on in recent weeks where
going on right now,
the stream has been cut off or the live stream has been cut. From now on, if the live stream does cut out, we won't be restarting. We will continue to record. You'll just have to switch over and catch us live on YouTube or www.worldjamglobalradio.com. But just remember this, in order for you to interact with the chat room, you're going to have to sign up to a Gmail or a YouTube account. That's for the YouTube and a website chat room. Or just stay with us on Facebook Live.
Did my time. I paid for my crime. I'm trying to get this felony off my back so I can get my life on track and have the right to vote and live like an ordinary citizen.
We're doing justice for Bodie Phelps.
To all of my friends.
My guest this week, apart from my producer who is supporting us, that's Teresa Posselt J. Gallagher. I need to ask her what the J stands for. Maybe we'll do that in a short while. But our guest speaker this week is the mother and activist. That's Shilo Wilson Phelps. We're going to be hearing from her.
It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell.
As we unravel this very confusing case.
I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
He had a gun, he had two guns, he had a knife, he had two knives, he didn't have a knife, he didn't have a gun. He runs, he always runs, he didn't run. He was here, he was there, he was never there.
Paid for my crime.
There was so much he said, she said, they said, that we're going to try and get to the bottom of the truth as best we can.
Superfly, but I never got high on my own supply. I'm not proud of what I.
And we're going to be hearing live and direct from his mother, Shilo Wilson Phelps.
I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb, my brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in common. I was the real Terminator, much meaner than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd shoot you up and spit you out like a real alligator, especially all you haters. Already did my time, paid for my crime. Already did my time, already did my time. I paid for my crime, already did my time.
The opening statements are going on right now. He could be facing life in prison.
Wow! Trying to cope with this living.
We're standing by for a live and interactive conversation via Skype with Shilo Wilson Phelps. She'll be talking to us live in just a few moments.
Trying to cope with this living hell.
Going live right across the world. My name is Kervin Julian. It's another edition of Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio Live.
In heaven, how will it be thy name? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
It's a platform where we support
in heaven
all families who are dealing with issues of injustice,
and forgive us our trespasses,
wrongful convictions, killed by cops,
and lead us not,
police corruption,
but deliver us,
prosecutorial misconduct,
the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Pay for my crime, pay for my crime, pay for my crime, pay for my crime. drive-by killers.
You can use the interactive chat rooms and also the comment sections on Facebook to ask any questions as we go live.
He was out sin. Let him cast the first.
Following the show.
I'm trying to get this felony off my back so I can get my life on track and have the right to vote and live like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all of my friends in the pen, statewide, worldwide, and put down those knives. Stop stabbing each other. Yeah.
Big shout out going out to each and every single one of you that is joining us live around the world. Okay, I'm hoping that our guests are going to be on the other end of this line waiting to join us live. So, first and foremost, let me just introduce my co-producer, Teresa Posselt Gallagher. Are you there, Therese? Hi, Therese.
Hi, boss. I'm here.
Okay, that's good. And I know we've had some difficulties connecting tonight. And yes, the show was almost cancelled because my grandchildren went missing. And I was in my car driving around looking for them. And they're still not back yet, but we're pretty satisfied they're going to be back very soon. So I think the panic is just over. So forgive me for that short interruption there. But thank you, Therese, for working so hard behind the scenes and just keeping everybody informed. Shilo, are you there?
Sure. I'm here. Yep.
Fantastic. We had no sound from you a short while ago and I was beginning to panic. So it's great to hear your voice. And
thank you.
Therese will be in the background listening and popping in and giving me some advice as we go along and probably adding some information and dropping it in for me so I can continue to support you with this particular platform. And first and foremost, before we go any further, maybe you could just take a few moments, Shilo, and just introduce yourself and tell the audience just a little bit about you first.
Okay. Well, I'm from Portland, Oregon. My son, I have 4 kids. My son, Bodie Phelps, was shot by Gresham police on May 24th, 2016. I also have 3 other children, Christopher, Amanda, and Tatum, and a grandson. I'm a grandmother now. My grandson was named after my son, Bodie. So it's nice hearing his name again. And at this point, I most of my work is done. I'm an activist in Portland, and depending on the day, depends on kind of what I'm doing. I as a mother, you tend to go gung ho for a while, and then you have to step back for a little bit, and then you go again, and you step back because it gets a bit overwhelming. So currently, I'm kind of I've been stepped back a little bit. So we have another event coming up in January, and then I'll be back up full force. Let's see what else. All my life pretty much is surrounded by this stuff, unfortunately, as of 2 years ago. So this is what I do. This is what I talk about. This is what I breathe, eat, and sleep, I guess.
Do you know, just before we go into the story itself, I've been doing this show for about 4 years, and it's and we've done this consistently every week. We have another mother, another family, or a father. Sometimes we have groups of people on here, and sometimes we actually just don't have. We have some professionals who are ex-police officers, ex-chiefs of police, etc. But for I'll just bring this point over from the mothers in particular. I've heard it so many times where their lives could have been doing all different things prior to the event, but since the event, that's all they've done. This is what you're saying to me is no different from what every mother who has lost a loved one in this type of fashion. It just consumes you, doesn't it, Shilo?
Oh yes, absolutely. Every waking moment, this is what I think about.
What do you find is the most frustrating thing about the circumstances that you find yourself in?
that nothing has been done about it, that there's no change in policies really, that it's so, and it takes so long to get anything done. That's why that's my most frustration, I think.
Wow. And very shortly we're going to be talking about your son Bodhi, who was shot down by Gresham Police. And in the headline when I did the promo, I titled it "Someone's Lying," because there are just so many discrepancies
Right.
in relation to the witness and the witness statements and what people have said and what the witnesses said and what the police say happened. It's just so conflicting that somebody must be lying. It's
Right.
as simple as that. But we're going to take an opportunity very shortly for you to tell us the events as you know it, or even the events as it was reported, and then we're going to try and strip it to pieces, piece by piece, step by step, and try and work our way around the facts and the information as we know it, and see if we can get a greater understanding and present a more plausible scenario than the one that police are offering up. Okay?
Great.
Are you happy with that?
Yes.
The unfortunate thing is, those of people who are used to this show, we normally do about a 10 minutes pre-show intro. Me and Shilo have not had the time to do that today because my grandchildren were missing, and I was out driving around looking, and I've got back with about 3 minutes to spare to us going on live. We were very close to cancelling the show today, which would have been unfortunate, but Shilo was very supportive in that. But we didn't cancel the show. It's here because it was meant to happen. So we're going to do this, okay?
Great.
Okay. Are you there, Therese? Oh, Therese is on mute.
No.
So that's okay. We know she's there. All right. So maybe you can start off by telling us, Shilo, just a little bit about Bodhi. Tell us what type of a child, and I don't want you to go straight into the adult Bodhi. I want to talk about the young man, the child that you brought into this world. What was he like at school? What was he like growing up? What was he like with his siblings? What was he like in the community with his friends as he was growing up? What sort of a pupil, a student was he at school? Humanize him for us, so that for the listening audience, the only information that they may have had or seen is what's been reported in the local press. Okay.
Okay.
So let's give them an idea of who your son was to you and the family. So tell us a little bit about him, and then we'll get on to that fateful day.
Okay. Well, I can first tell you that the day my son was born was the day that I knew what true love was. I remember looking at him thinking, oh my God, how could a person love another person so much? And our relationship from that point, from the moment I saw him, the moment actually I knew I was pregnant, we became very, very close. When he was little, his father worked and went to school, so it was him and I a lot of the time. And he went everywhere with me. He was my ride or die kind of kid. Everywhere I went, he was there. He remembers going to work with me. He remembers, all the little trips. When he was small, he had these big dark brown eyes, and he would just look around and watch everything. He didn't interact much with everybody because he just wanted to take it all in. We always thought, what is he thinking about? As he grew up a little, as he got bigger and bigger, and he had this little raspy voice. It was so cute. He talked like this, it was adorable. He was extremely intelligent, although he had dyslexia. And it took him quite a few years to learn how to read. But once he learned how to read, then he was off the charts. He had an IQ of 142, extremely intelligent, always wanted to, dissect everything and question everything, which is fine by me. I think it's important that kids, question what's being said. And however, not being disrespectful, because my kid was also very, very respectful. As he grew up, he had many friends. Had neighborhood friends that would come over, and we'd have craft day, and that was their favorite day. They'd come over and I'd pull all the craft stuff out, and Bodhi and his little buddies would be out there making, popsicle stick men and all kinds of hilarious things. In fact, one time he walked up him and his little friend from down the street, they had taken boxes and they painted them silver, and they walked up like they were robots up the street. It was hilarious. So he was very creative. He was extremely good in sports. He played sports. He played football from the time he was 8, basketball and baseball. His favorite was football. He was a wide receiver, and he was really good at what he did. He also modeled when he was 16. He did some catalog work, and he was a very good looking boy, 6'3", dressed very well. Always had his hair done. We kind of teased him quite a bit because he was always looked too perfect for our family. With that, maybe that he was swapped out at birth for some reason. But he loved to quad. He loved to ride his quads, and he was a good brother. He loved my daughter, who is 19 right now. They are best friends, and he used to call her Crybaby. And they had this little song, and he'd walk in the house and say, what's my I can't remember the song exactly. And he would say something, and she would say, "Crybaby, crybaby." Then he realized one day that he thought it was very derogatory term, so he changed her nickname and started calling her Tadpole. He was notorious for having nicknames for everyone. So if you were part of his life, you had a nickname. My name was Mama Bear. My daughter's was Tadpole. And so everybody had their little nicknames. And that was a big deal. I mean, you knew that you were part of Bodie's life if he gave you a nickname. And if you didn't have a nickname, it was coming soon for sure. Let's see what else about my son. He was just a really cool kid to hang out with. Everybody loved to talk to him. He loved to sit down and just talk to you. He didn't care if you lived on the streets or if you were a doctor. It didn't bother him either way. He looked at everybody the same. And when I say that, I mean, I honestly mean that. He treated everyone that I've ever talked to or I've ever seen with respect, regardless. It was funny. A couple of weeks before he passed, he was still 22 and still naive, of course, and he was wearing a bandana and this little paisley bandana. He walked in the door. I said, "Oh, nice bandana, Bodie." He says, "Thanks, Mom." He goes, "Yeah, I got a lot of respect with this bandana." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes. 3 people called me boss today." I said, 3 people called you boss? He goes, "Yeah, it's because of the bandana." And I started laughing, thinking, "Oh my goodness, who is this boy?" But he was just a cool kid. He was fun to hang out with, and I miss him terribly. My life has changed drastically without him. That's for sure.
I can actually hear the love, that is obviously deep in your heart. And
I have a little story. The day before he died, he took me to work that morning, and I worked 2 miles from the house that we were living at. 6% downgrade to where we lived. It was down kind of in the valley. And that I got off work and I thought, well, I'm not going to call him. I'm just going to go ahead and walk down, and I need the exercise. So it was foolish on my part. By the time I got down the hill, my knee was killing me. It took me a good, I don't even know, maybe an hour and a half to walk down 2 miles. By the time I got to my house, there was a bit long driveway, and I yelled, "Bodie, Bodie." He comes up to the door. He says, "Yeah, Mom." I said, "Come get me, please. My knee's killing me." Well, the driveway was really long. And instead of him driving down, I thought for sure he'd grab the car and drive down. He ran down and insisted on carrying me all the way up this hill. And I screamed. I said, "No, you can't carry me all the way up there. There's no way you can do it." He said, "Mom, I've got you." So he picked me up, and we were laughing. I was kicking, and we got to the top of the hill, and he put me down. I said, "Oh my gosh, Bodie." He says, "Mom, I always got you. Don't worry about it. I love you." And that was the last time I saw him.
Wow. That was the last time you saw him?
That was the last time I saw him. Yes. It's heartbreaking.
That's
yes.
That's just got to hurt like hell.
Oh yeah.
Now
yeah.
you said that you said that you had 3 other children.
I have 3 other children. Yes.
Okay, so how was Bodie with them? How was he with his siblings? How did they get on?
Oh, my youngest daughter, and him were best friends. I mean, they were really close. Two of my kids are adopted, and two of mine are my biological children. My adopted children came to our house when they were 9 and 10, and he was really best friends with his older the brother, who would have turned out to be a year and a half older. And then Amanda, who was the younger sister of the oldest brother, she was about 2-3 months older than Bodie. So that was kind of an issue. But they, it's funny, the Thanksgiving before he died, they just started to get to, become friends again, become friends, period, because they didn't have to have that competition. And she invited him over for Thanksgiving, and we had the most beautiful Thanksgiving. It was very nice. Like I said, my 19-year-old daughter is having a really rough time with him being gone. It's been devastating for her, because she, you have kids I wanted my kids to have each other when I'm gone, long and gone. I wanted my kids to have each other. And my daughter feels like she's kind of been, I guess, screwed out of that, having an older brother and her older brother around. When she got pregnant, she was excited because we just knew she was having a boy. And so she named him Bodie, and that helps a little bit, but nothing ever will help the loss of her brother. That's for sure. But they all got along great. It was wonderful. Their childhoods were beautiful.
You must have some really fond memories of, those early years as they were growing up, watching them grow up together, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Doing stuff together.
Right.
Can you remember anything in particular that you can just recall them doing together? Even the whole of you lot as a family going somewhere or just doing something that really springs to mind?
Well, I'll tell you this. Let's see. I was already divorced at this point, and I have all 4 kids with me, and we were in the house and playing around, hanging out. Everybody loved to tease and balloon fights and all kinds of fun things. Well, Bodie was teasing Amanda one day, and she said, "Bodie, stop teasing me." And so all of this, I was in my bedroom with my daughter, and my other son was right there next to me. And Bodie and Amanda, we could hear them kind of fighting a little bit. And so he didn't stop, and all of a sudden, Bodie ran in my room, and in ran Amanda, and Amanda tackled him on the chair, and she held him down, and we were all like, "Oh my goodness!" And we started to laugh. We're like, "Well, what's going on?" And I said, "Well, Amanda, are you going to get off?" And she's like, "Nope." I said, "Well, why aren't you going to get off Bodie?" And she had him face down on the chair, and she says, "Because I'm really scared about what's going to happen next." We all laughed. We said, "No, nothing's going to happen. We're all here now. He's not going to, because, siblings retaliate often." And so she started just like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm positive." So she jumped up, and my son was so scared because this girl had tackled his sister nonetheless. Anyways, that's actually one of the funniest moments that we talk about, all the time, the day that Amanda tackled Bodie.
You also mentioned in your introduction of Bodie, just what a handsome man he was, and that he used to do a lot of modeling, right?
Right.
And you can actually tell in those pictures that are being displayed in our carousel as we go live, that he was a very well presented young man.
Absolutely.
Took care of himself, looked well.
Right.
So let's just, was there a point in his life where things just started to go wrong?
Well, you would have never known on the outside, but on the inside, he did have an addiction problem. And when he was 16 years old, another, I guess he would have been a dealer, gave him and his friends what he called opium. They had no idea that it was heroin. Right. And right. And so they opium, great. They didn't talk about heroin in school. It was kind of when it first came out. I had no idea heroin was a problem. No parents knew it was a problem. In fact, the school had no clue it was a problem. So when I noticed a change in my son, and I kept asking him, now, like I said, you would have never known on the outside. He always looked great. That was never, I mean, he never looked like he used any drug, let alone heroin. And so I kept asking, what's wrong? What's wrong? Well, the opium he found out was heroin, and him and his buddies had taken it for a good week. And at that point they were sick. And so he was living with his father at the time, and I didn't realize that was the issue. I knew something was wrong, and I kept questioning about it. And when I found out, I tell you, my stomach just dropped. It was the worst feeling ever. I mean, I would think that there's two horrible things in my life, and the worst one of them was finding out that my son was on heroin, and the other one was when he was killed. As
a mother, you find out that your child is taking a Class A drug, something as lethal and addictive as heroin. What do you do? How did you approach that with him?
Well, I was very naive about it. So we had him come to the house, and he was going to detox. And little did I know that detoxing from heroin. I thought, okay, great. He got up the next day. Said, okay, Mom, I feel great. I'm gonna go. I said, oh, you're dead already? I had no clue, because this, like I said, this was not an epidemic at this point. I mean, it was just starting to be an epidemic. It was, if parents would have started talking back then we may have been able to do something about it, but nobody was talking. So, after I found out that I found out that he could not detox that quick. I'll be honest with you, I started tracking him. He was 16 years old. I knew exactly where he was. I knew who he called. I knew who, so I knew who the dealers were. I knew what their numbers. I knew where they lived. And I went to both police departments and the school police officers. And I said, here's a list of all the dealers that are dealing to the kids. I've been tracking him for over 30 days. This is it. And they told me, we can't go by every lead a mother gives us. That's exactly what they told me. I said, okay, well then I guess I'll have to do it myself.
You mean you're telling me that you're reporting that a minor is at risk, and they're saying that there's nothing that they can do?
Right, nothing they can do. But they can't go by every lead their mother gives us. Yeah, and so I told them that I would have to take care of it myself. And so I started going out and hunting down the dealers and pretty much harassing them. And in fact, a couple years before my son died, I met this woman, and she said, oh, were you Bodie's mom? I said, yeah. She goes, oh my gosh, I stopped dealing heroin because of you. So apparently it did work a little bit, but not enough. So he struggled with the addiction from the age of 16 to 22, and he hated it. I mean, it's an ugly thing. I don't know, this is the last thing you ever want to even admit that your kid was on heroin, but you don't talk about it, then you can't help anybody else. And the situation is not going to get any better. I went to all the parents as well after I found out of all the other kids, his friends that were using, and none of them wanted to believe it. They were like, no, my son's not using that. And every one of their kids had issues from there on out. And in fact, a couple of them have OD'd. It's devastating. It's devastating what it did. But we got no help from either the school district or the police department.
It's a sad indictment. I mean, for me, I can't help but believe in God and the Word of God. And there's an old saying, and it's one of those memes that I've put on Facebook on a couple of occasions, because here in the UK they've now taken the Bible out of schools. And it goes something like, if they gave the kids the Bible, if they gave kids the Bibles back in school, they wouldn't have to be giving it to them while they're in prison, or something like that.
Right.
Words to that effect. Because you can't find a prison cell without a Bible nowadays.
Right.
But yet they won't teach kids the real right from wrong as we knew it when we were growing up, so to speak. And I'm not saying that we were perfect. We made terrible mistakes ourselves, but there was still that platform of right and wrong that was being taught and educated when we were growing up. And there's a real definitive line of understanding what that was, But the fact that they've taken the Bible out of schools now means that kids are learning this new generic style of manufactured right and wrong, which is production line tobacco tin, I call it, ready to fit microwave society. So they just
Right.
they kind of just make it up as they go along, and our children have a very weak understanding as to what is definitively right and wrong. You know.
Right.
So here you are trying to battle for the life and the soul of your child, who you've discovered is now on a Class A drug, which will ruin and can and does ruin people's lives. And you're getting very little, if any, help whatsoever from the very places that you should be getting the most help from. Right? Because if the police and the school detectives, etc., were to engage back then, I'm just wondering how many children they could have avoided going into prisons. But we're talking in hindsight. And unfortunately, there's not much that we can do about those. But I'm feeling your pain and your frustration as you explain this journey that you went on in trying to point out where the failings were, who the drug dealers were, the access, and not even just the negative responses that you were getting from the school and the police, but even from other parents who just didn't want to know, apparently.
Right, exactly.
So
yeah, they got it.
What did that do to Bodhi? Where did that send him? What direction did that lead him into?
For the direction from what I did, what I did, or what?
No, for what he was doing, because choices have consequences,
right?
And these choices that he was making was obviously inevitably leading him to unsavory consequences. So where did that take him?
Right. Well, unfortunately, that when you're a heroin addict, you get sick, and you, there's your body. I don't know if you don't know about heroin, heroin it makes you physically ill, and it's something. It's a drug that you will never, unless now they have a couple shots, of course, but that will help you kind of get over the cravings. But you think about it for the rest of your life. So here's this child that has had the addiction to 16. So he's only had 16 years without, I'm 48. So if I would have only had 16 years without, a drug telling me that, I want it every day, I can imagine. So here's this, this child is trying to go through puberty and figure everything else out. And on top of it, he has an addiction, a terrible addiction. And by the time, as you get older, as you go through it, your addiction becomes more and more, and you need more and more. So Bodhi, he worked for a while, and then he never ever stole from me or his family, ever. I would have to put that out there. He was extremely respectful about our stuff, but he had, every addict, heroin addict probably has a little hustle. And so Bodhi would have to do some side work, some job. He would have to, ask friends for the money, well, I will tell you this, that when I took him to detox, and we did this quite often. I mean, he was always wanting to get clean. So he always went through treatment. And that's a lot of work on one person. That's a lot of pain you have to go through. So you really have to want it. You don't just go and sit in a treatment center and get better. You have to go through all of the, the physical anguish, the mental anguish, the psychological anguish of it all. And so you really want to get clean, if you're doing this to yourself. But I remember we went to detox, and the lady said, don't let him get sick. And I looked at her, I said, don't let him get sick. What? I said, excuse me. She goes, don't let him get sick, because when they get sick, they really do dumb things. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're right. Because some of the worst things, that you hear, criminal cases are when the criminal has gotten sick and is desperate. So, that was always on my mind is, I didn't want him or any of his friends desperate. That always worried me. They would come, his friends would come over and I was kind of like the hub. We had a house that was right in the middle of Gresham, and a lot of the time their friends would come over and they would say, Shilo, I'm so sick. And I'm like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. What can I do for you? Can I do something to eat? And then sugar is a really good thing for addicts that are trying to come off it. So I give them a bunch of sugar and candy and and I just told him, please don't go do anything stupid. I just don't want you to do anything stupid. But I think when he was 18, which he was still, a child, he this is the big thing that it was all over the news after he was killed, that he was in some kind of check cashing ring, which is he was 18 years old. Pretty much a man walked up into a bunch of heroin addicts and said, hey, can you cash this check and make some money? They're thinking, okay, cool. It's in their name, right? There's not pretending to be anybody else. And he's asking them to cash checks. And they're thinking this is an easy way for us to not have to get in any trouble and get some money for our, heroin. So, and that's him and his buddies. In fact, there was quite a few that had cashed a check in their name, which was foolish. I mean, again, 18 years old and extremely naive. So when it came up, as far as the check cashing, scam, they said he was a ringleader. He was not a ringleader. He was friends with everybody. There was all of his friends that were into it, that had done it, and he was apparently he was the one that they decided to nail. As they couldn't indict. I think there was hundreds of people that cashed checks in the Portland area, hundreds. So there was, so many checks out there that they had no clue what they were dealing with, and they're probably still trying to work it all out, I'm sure. But they couldn't go around indicting all these people because it would have cost the city a large amount of money, I'm sure. And so they instead they took we thought the best looking kid, to be honest with you, the one that looked the best, and made him the ringleader. And then they made a couple other people ringleaders. I talked to my son about it. I said, no, I'm not. I wasn't the one that introduced this guy. Another friend of his was. And I wasn't a ringleader. All they did was, they came up to us and asked if we wanted to cash checks. And, not a good idea. Hindsight, didn't sound like a good idea at all. But again, he was a child still, 18 years old. Had no clue. He was naive, and they were just trying to figure out, how to deal with their addiction.
Let me just say this for people that are listening. I take my hat off to you, Shilo. You are a very intelligent and informative woman, full of resources and compassionate support. And I can tell from the depth of information that you've given, you've managed to grab yourself a real handle on the problems that those sort of kids were having in and around your home and your community.
Right.
And we haven't got to talk much, but I run a charity here in the UK, and I work with a lot of homeless, drug addicted and alcohol dependent individuals whom I support and I call friend, and they call me friend. And that stems from the fact that I was actually a drug addict for over 36 years. And I took everything from heroin to crack cocaine. In fact, I understand what you mean when you talk about the length of time that he's gone without, because I'm now 13 years clean since I found God, turned my life around and met with Jesus. And now I've turned my life around for 13 years now, and I'm helping people who lived a life very similar to the one that I used to live. But I can hear deep within your heart how much you care for people. And when you talk about how Bodhi had this kind of care for others, I can see where he gets it from. Because you could be angry, but you're not. I don't hear anger. You could be sitting down there blaming everybody else, but you're not. Because that's another easy thing for people to do, and it's a trap that a lot of people fall into. But you're also acknowledging that there were choices that he was making that weren't good. They weren't good for him, but that's where he goes. Now, here's the thing, Shilo. For all these dependencies and reliances that Bodhi now needed in order for him to be able to sustain himself with his drug dependency, what was his relationship like with local police?
Okay, so I will tell you this, that each of the time that he got picked up for the check stuff, it was his birthday actually, and me and his sister, or his sister and I were sitting at the house waiting for him. And I'm like, and I was getting upset. I was like, where is your brother? I'm so upset. We've got cupcakes, we've got presents. Where is he? And hours went by. And finally he called. He says, Mom, I'm okay. And I said, okay. He goes, I got a little trouble. And I'm like, oh, my heart just dropped. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? He says, it's okay. I'm at the Gresham Police Department. I cashed a check. I'm going to deal with it. I'm like, okay. So I'm a very hands-on kind of parent, and I don't allow my kids to be, left alone at their own, just to deal with things. They need me and guidance. And so I went straight down to the police department the next day. And the one thing that the police officers always said, your son's extremely respectful. Every time that we had any encounter, my boys were always very, I'm saying boys because the girls didn't get any trouble at all. But they were always very respectful. So because I taught my kids, have respect first and foremost. If you walk into a situation and you're disrespectful, nobody's going to listen to you, no matter what you've done. But if you walk into a situation, you're respectful, then everybody will listen to you. I'll at least give you, the opportunity to talk. So he actually had not a terrible relationship with any of the officers, in town. In fact, I ran into one point that had years ago that had had a little run-in with him, and he said, he ran because Bodie ran, and he was fight or flight kind of guy, and he kind of like we ran in high school, and we the cops showed up at parties. Everybody runs, and everybody's like, I would never run. Really? Did you not go to parties in high school? Because I ran all the time. So unless you stood there and looked like an idiot, you wanted to get taken home to your parents with an MIP, you ran. So Bodie ran, and he said, he says, wow, he goes, I cannot believe how fast your kid was. As a matter of fact, I thought I should let him go because he was so good, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And actually one of the only police officers that I really like in Gresham. So we've had other encounters with him before when my dog was stolen and such. And he's always been very nice. So he said, but he did say, he was really fast, and thought he should get away. And, your boy was very respectful. So that's the kind of relationship he had with the local authorities.
I resonate with that because one of the things was when I did get caught, when I was caught, it was always like, hands up and let's just get it over and done with. There was there's a few times when I did fight, and it was only when I felt that I was being mistreated that I'd fight. But I always tend to fight more for others than I did for myself. If somebody else was being dealt with, I'm more likely to get into a ruck for someone else more than myself. I don't know whether that's down to my self-worth or the lack of confidence that I had, but I doubt if it was confidence, because I was confident fighting for someone else, just not so competent fighting for me, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I fully understand where you're going with this, and I think I'm doing this deliberately because I'm trying to give people an understanding. We've had so many cases where we've had individuals who are on drugs, drug dependent, taking one drug or another. And the police are beginning to use that as an excuse to gun people down and kill them, or criminalize them in a much more serious way than they were ever that has ever appeared to be justified. I just want to try and give people a better understanding that because you're an addict and you make wrong choices, you still deserve to die with dignity, and right is still right and wrong is still wrong.
Absolutely.
If your son was shot dead trying to mug an old lady or rape or molest a 2-year-old child, you wouldn't be sat here trying to defend him the way that you are, right? You'd be appalled, you'd be ashamed, you'd still love him in your heart, but you just couldn't stand there and defend it. But unfortunately, all of these women and families that we're speaking to, we're talking to people whose children may have had in fact, majority of them that we speak to, they don't have no criminal activity, no criminal records, and no relationship with local police. It's very few that we come across that do have, and those that do have, it's quite minimal, like Bodie. Now, I want to go on to that fateful day because it appears that because him and his girlfriend were codependent, I'd imagine, right? So they were both using
Correct.
drugs, right? I would imagine that relationship was volatile.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Right. And they both, drugs do make you act differently. Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. It makes you do the most silly, ridiculous things.
Right.
But you do them together, and it's almost a Bonnie and Clyde relationship, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of, take out the excessive, let's see, take out the thieving and all that good stuff. But yes, it's like a Bonnie and Clyde. They're a little duo. They have each other, and that's what they do. I mean, that's a lot of addicts. I'm assuming addict couples. That's how they act. I mean, that's how they work together, right?
What was
usually when you have? Oh, go ahead.
No, you go on.
Well, usually when you have a lot of drug addictions, there's also there's reasons why somebody takes uses drugs, and so you also have mental health issues as well in there, and I'm sure my son was there's some part of him that he comes from a family that's line of alcoholics and addicts, and he also depression, and there's a lot of things in our family history that the drugs obviously made him feel better. I don't know.
Well, let's just get that right. A first and foremost, the drugs that we're talking about are depressants, right? So they'll
Right.
cause depression, they cause anxiety. So, and all of these are mental health related issues. They cause paranoia. Again, another mental health. So you've got a combination. If you was just suffering from one of these issues, it would be tough.
Right.
But when you've got all of them, it's even tougher. And some people might even turn around and say, well, yeah, it's self-inflicted because he's taking drugs. But what a lot of people don't realize is there's a difference between something like crack cocaine and heroin. Crack cocaine is a drug of the mind. Heroin is a drug of the body. And once you become addicted to heroin, your body needs it. Alcohol is something that you can't just stop doing. If you are totally alcohol dependent, you need to be weaned off it. Doctors would advise you not to just stop, because you couldn't, because it could just kill you. Right?
Right.
And heroin, if you are a heroin addict, you can't just stop. You need to be weaned off it. And yes, some people might consider it to be self-inflicted because they started taking it in the first place. But majority of people who take drugs for the first time normally take it in a couple of circumstances. One is out of curiosity because it's the type of people that they're with, and the other, more often than not, right, it's going to be because that they're in a vulnerable position. They're lost, they're hurt, they're broken, they feel rejected for whatever reason, and it's a mask, it's a way out. Okay, so we do understand that. So let's just look at some of this day in particular, because I wanted to ask you, what was your relationship like with his girlfriend?
My relationship with his girlfriend, he loved her, so I loved her. Okay. I saw how much he loved her and how much he wanted to be with her. So I'm not the type of person to ever reject anybody that somebody else loves, especially my own kids. Yeah. So, right. So we, but, we had, of course, she's part of the family at that point. So we still have, we have our issues that come up, but we work them out and we move on.
Okay. And, but you was aware that, that they were codependent. You was aware that she was using with him.
Absolutely aware.
Okay.
Yes. And we, yes, absolutely.
And I would imagine, so them having, arguments, them fighting, 9 times out of 10, it was either over money or drugs or the lack of it or whose turn it was to pay for it or all the other arguments that people that are drug dependent or codependent have, right? But they're always petty arguments that normally resolve themselves once they were in possession of their drug of choice, right?
Right, correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what was different about this day, do you think?
Well, this day, unfortunately, there was a phone call made that was that she had seen, or somebody called Bodie. It was another girl who called Bodie that they had dated previously, and she was upset about this. So when she was that night, she was going into that situation. she was upset thinking that Bodhi might leave her.
Yeah.
So everything from there on that happened was because of this, phone call that was made.
And also her access to the level of dependency that she was now on was going to be taken away from her.
Right. She was worried about that. Right.
Because
exactly.
that's the thinking, right?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
if
he's gone, then,
if he's gone,
that means her addiction's going to suffer because she won't be able to get, the drugs and
she doesn't have the means that he has.
Right.
Okay.
Yes,
so now take us to that day. What was going on that day? And you said that there was that prior argument. Now let's take it to the incident now. What took place? Okay. As far as you're aware.
Earlier that day that they were arguing, and she had mentioned that she had left, and so that's the reason why Bodhi had left my house, is because he was looking for his girlfriend, and I told him, I said, she's because she'd done this before. When she gets too upset, she'll just call the cops, and because she would rather see Bodhi in jail than with another girl. That's what it boils down to. That's how her thinking is.
That's not her thinking. That's what codependents are like.
Right, correct.
When you have couples who are codependent using drugs, that's what they were like. The jealousy, the all of that stuff. They don't want them to get hurt, but being in jail is better than being with someone else.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
So I understand that. So tell us what happened, why the police were called.
Okay, so they were arguing, and she was on his lap in the car, and she wanted to drive, and he said, "There's no way in hell, I'm gonna let you drive. You're out of control. You're not driving. You're not driving me. You're not driving your car. You're sitting. There's no way." So she was on his lap, trying to drive, trying to get him to go, and two 14-year-old girls saw this go on, and they thought that she was being kidnapped. Why in the hell she would be put on a lap in the driver's seat, I don't know. But when they called the 911, they said that there's a kidnapping. So, and then they had talked to her back and forth. And 911 dispatch asked, what's going on? And I can't remember. Honestly, I can't remember the details, but I do remember them asking if he had weapons, and her answer was no, he had no weapons. So, and then that's what the girls reported back to 911. Then after that was done, they had left that area and proceeded to the next area.
Okay.
When they got. Yeah, you want me to go ahead and just tell the story?
Let's tell the story. Let's tell the story.
Okay. So on the way to the next location, they knew that the cops were being called, and apparently Bodhi was scared because his mentality was not that he was going to get in trouble for hurting anybody, because he didn't want to go into jail and detox. So he was worried about that. So it had nothing to do with him hurting her or him being out of control. He was worried because he knew if the cops caught up to him.
So let's just get this right. The cops that were coming out for him, they knew him.
No. These cops did not know Bodhi. Okay. No, they in fact they didn't even, at this point, the 911 dispatch did not know who he was.
Okay.
And that's kind of important. That's kind of important thing to know because they then they of course the police have techniques to villainize these victims and, to the public. And what happens is they use things like, his past criminal record, that sort of thing, that he was working out. Actually, he was going to court, he was in different programs. He was working this out, but people don't understand that. And people also don't understand was when you get picked up for let's say a failure to appear, or whatever, your 10-day sanctions, because out in Oregon they have a drug court, and if you get in a little trouble, you have 10-day sanctions. Well, when you get picked up, you get your picture taken again, and then it says felony. So, but it's a felony from the prior, or whatever the charge is from the prior charge. You're just being picked up for that charge again, for doing a sanction, but it still says felony, drug possession. Not that he had 10 drug possessions. He had 1 drug possession. That's it. He had 1 time. That's when he got in trouble. He relapsed, and he got in trouble that day. Actually, he was buying it that day, and he didn't. But it looked like he had like 10, 10 possessions. That's not the case. He had 1 possession. So people didn't understand that. They look at his record and they're like, "Oh my God, you should see all of the, the, what do you call it? The mugshots." No. It was for one possession. So okay. Anyway, so he was worried that he was going to have to detox. So when they got to the second location, he pulled off to the side of the road and he went to his friend's house. This is heartbreaking. This is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever heard. It just as a mother, it just kills me. But he went up to his friend's house because he was scared, and his friend shooed him away because his friend was worried that his mother would find out that he was using drugs. And so so he shooed Bodie away from the house. And Bodie went back to the car. He grabbed 2 cases of beer, not to drink, because he figured if he got his 2 cases of beer, he could sell it to his friends or whatever, and then he could get, if he was going to run, he could have bus fare to get back home. That's what his mentality was. He sat on the curb, and this is when Courtney was afraid. He was walking away from her, and she started screaming, and she called 911 so that he was hitting and kicking her. Well, he's 6'3". There was not a bruise on her. He did not kick her or hit her at all whatsoever. I've talked to her about this many times. She was so irate that she wanted the cops there as fast as they could get there to pick him up. So she was going to do anything she could to get him there. And that's what she did. In fact, the gentleman who stayed with Courtney said there was no marks on her face, just her makeup running because she was crying. But she said Bodie had hit and kicked her. And I have a lot of friends that are women advocates, as far as domestic abuse. Yeah. And they were really, when they first heard this, they were upset. Now, since they didn't understand that he did not, there was no domestic violence, he did not hit her, kick her whatsoever. They've kind of cooled down. Actually, they have cooled down a lot, and they can see the situation for what it really is. Yeah. That it wasn't domestic call at all whatsoever. I think
until people are involved or engaged with couples that are codependent, they'll never understand the dynamics that make up that couple. So it's a very hard one for people to comprehend. To be honest,
it is. And then when the officer showed up, Gavin Sasser showed up first. He didn't assess the situation. He didn't walk. Courtney's car was on one part of the street. Bodie was sitting on the completely different part of the street, and Courtney was on 89th, and Bodie was on Grant, I think it was. So 2 different streets. He should have assessed. He should have walked over to Courtney at least to see what was going on. Bodie wasn't doing anything. He was sitting there. Had he done this, he would have seen that Courtney wasn't hurt, and that Bodie, he didn't have to go after Bodie. I mean, I don't understand why he wouldn't have done this. Can I
just ask you to confirm or dismiss one of the allegations? It says here, by the time the authorities took the girlfriend to the hospital, her eyes were starting to swell and bruise from an apparent attack. Was that true?
That's all lies. She never went to the hospital. She didn't go to the hospital. Okay. She never went to the hospital.
And in your talking to her since Bodie's killing, has she admitted that most of the information was fabricated and lies?
She was so out of her mind that night, and yes, she has. We have talked about this many times. In fact, I talk to her on a regular basis.
But I would have imagined that when the police thought that she was spewing all of this out, this was going to be their backup. Listen, let's really get to it, right? So the police have arrived on scene now, right? Now, at the beginning of the, on the promo, we said that, he had one knife, he had 2 knives. No, he had a gun. No, he had 2 guns. He said, she said, he ran, he didn't run. He always run. What actually happened? What was, as far as you know?
Okay. So as far as I know, and I've gone over all the accounts of everybody. Gavin Sasser showed up. Bodie was sitting on the curb. He told Bodie to stay there. Bodie panicked, got up, and ran. And he had 2 cases of beer in his hand when he did it. He dropped one case about maybe 20 feet and then ran around the corner. Gavin Sasser soon to follow. And then dropped another case. At that point, it was 30 seconds, within 30 seconds that Gavin Sasser showed up, that my son was dead. So it took time. It took, just maybe 15 seconds to run to where Bodie was at and follow Bodie. And then Kevin Carlson showed up 8 seconds after Gavin Sasser showed up. And this is pretty, and this is verifiable because we saw the videos. You know, we could see them. You know, when Gavin Sasser showed up, when Kevin Carlson showed up. There's only one video, and it's the video that's pointing directly down Grant, and you can't see them when they turn the corner, but you can see them running, so you know what time they showed up. Bodie was really fast. He was a fast runner. I mean, he could literally. There was nobody that could beat him. He was extremely fast. And so Gavin Sasser, with all of his stuff on his body, I don't know, 50 pounds of weight or 30 pounds of weight, and there's no way he was as fast as Bodie. He wasn't as young as Bodie. You know, that he said Gavin Sasser said he caught up to Bodie. He pushed him, and as he pushed him, he said Bodie reached in his pockets, pulled two knockoff police issue knives out of his pockets, and simultaneously opened them up and went after him. Okay, that was Gavin Sasser's deal. Kevin Carlson said that Gavin Sasser pushed him. He was worried. Kevin Carlson said he was worried about Gavin Sasser, you know, getting out of breath, you know, getting tired after the 10-second run he did. And he saw him push Bodie, and he said then he saw Bodie rummage through his pockets. Now, mind you, that this is like 22 seconds that he would have seen all this, because Carlson showed up 8 seconds after Gavin Sasser. Bodie was rummaging through his pockets, and then he reached out and he had two knives, or one knife. One of them, I think, was one knife, and then went after him. So my son was always fight or flight. There's no way he would have ever gone after anybody with a knife, let alone police officers. Why has he run away? He would have gotten away, period. I mean, if he wouldn't have been shot, he can jump 10-foot fences. He would have gotten away regardless. But for them to say that they pushed him and then he simultaneously, and these little knives are ridiculous. So when after that, Bodie was shot 11 times. He was shot once in the back of the hip. And when I brought this to the attention, everybody said, yeah, this is hilarious. This is that's not hilarious. This is the kind of stuff that's so frustrating that they, like I said, they have techniques where they they'll try to convince the community and people around it that your son is a villain or your daughter's a villain. And this is one of them they use. They said, no, he was not shot in the back. He was shot in the upper buttocks. Excuse me. Last time I checked, the buttocks are on the back side, right? So that, and everybody's like, oh, he wasn't shot in the back. He was shot in the buttocks. What are you talking about?
It's still the back.
The buttocks. Yeah, it's part of the back. Are you kidding me? So
he was still shot. He was still shot with his back to the officer.
As he ran away.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah, as he ran away. Mm-hmm. Correct. And then they said that and then he turned around. He was shot once in the wrist, once in his thumb, because he obviously had his hands up. And there were clearly, if he had his hands up, then he wouldn't have any knives in his hands. That's not the position he'd be in. And then he shot 8 more times in the belly, the last shot being to the heart, and which killed him instantly.
Let me just read this report. It says, Bodie Wilson Dean Phelps of Fairview, 22, died as a result of gunfire, Gresham Police said Wednesday in a news release. Witnesses said he refused repeated orders to drop his knives. Right? Well, we'll come back to that in a minute. Apart from the police responded, there's a certain part I want to get to, and I want to get to it for a reason. It says police responded to the 800 block of Southeast 190th Avenue shortly after 3 a.m. Tuesday on reports of a man assaulting and abducting a woman. Right, and I want to highlight that phrase. Right, the reports of a man assaulting and abducting a woman. Witnesses told police that Phelps forced a 25-year-old woman into a sedan, and he drove away before police got to the scene. Witnesses said the woman was screaming and banging the inside of the sedan, which was stopped wherever it was stopped. She also called 911, police said, and reported Phelps assaulted her. He was outside the car at the time. Phelps ran from officers when they arrived and didn't stop when they told him to, and 2 officers ran after Phelps, who brandished a pair of knives. People told police they heard police tell Phelps multiple times to drop the knife, and later heard gunshots. Phelps had 3 outstanding warrants, a felony warrant for heroin possession and probation violations for identity theft and heroin possession, police said. The case is under investigation, blah, 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 blah. Right.
Right.
I just want to go back a bit because, you know, when I asked you at the very beginning of the show to humanize Bodhi so that we can get an understanding of the type of person that he was, it's because once the newspapers and the media gets a hold of it, we normally hear what the police want us to hear.
Right.
And so part of the backlash in you trying to get support for justice for Bodhi would have been on statements like this.
Right.
Reports of a man assaulting and abducting a woman. Now, it makes it sound like he was abducting a stranger, a passerby, right?
Absolutely.
He forced
Part of villainizing him.
He forced the 25-year-old woman into a car. Sounds like he could possibly trying to rape her or molest her or
Right.
all of this imagery is what Joe Bloggs, who does not know Bodhi, who's never met him, doesn't know anything about him, is going to start visualizing as they read through this article, right? And the fact that he's brandishing a couple of pair of knives when he gets caught can only further justify the kill in the eyes of the police.
Right. Absolutely. That's their techniques to villainize him.
The reality
Absolutely.
of what took place is nothing like this, though, is it?
No, nothing. No.
Okay.
Not at all. Not
so,
at all. And I mean, like I said, these are the techniques that they use to villainize the victim, so they are in the right. I mean, you see it all the time with all of these shootings. There's always, they're always misguiding or misleading the community to believing that these people, these kids, are these horrendous, villains, that they're going around and stealing your daughters and shooting. It's ridiculous, and people are believing it. That's what's really,
But here's here's what Courtney said. Courtney said this, right? She got a flat tire when a couple pulled over on Grant Street. We hit each other. We got a little out of hand and we hit each other. I mean, it shouldn't have been like that. She said reports of her banging on the windows of the car and yelling for help are not true. That didn't happen. These are her words. It might have appeared that happened because we were fighting, she says. Police says Phelps was wanted on 3... So they report very little of what she says, but she's quite clear when she says that they were fighting. So in other words, he wasn't assaulting her, he hadn't abducted her, he wasn't trying to smuggle her into a car so he can go and rape and molest her. Right. They were fighting, and they were having an argument, and I would imagine that they were fighting over her believing that he was about to go away and go off with this other woman, and that would cut off her drug supply.
Right.
But the police,
and I think that she. Oh, go ahead.
No, you carry on.
Well, and I think that the reason, and I will tell you this, the reason why, my son didn't hit Courtney. And the reason why she would have said that they were hitting each other, because she didn't want him to seem like a horrible person. And I'm sure she hit her because that's what happens. Usually the women are, there are a lot of the women will hit the man when they're upset. But the cops in this case threatened to take her child. So she had to say something that wasn't too horrible, as far as Bodhi goes. But she didn't want to say anything that was horrible, because she knew that was not the truth. So saying that they were both doing it together seemed to be a little less harsh, I think. But they threatened to take her child, and she just she had to work with the police in the beginning because of that. And in the end, her parents ended up taking custody of the child, so that wouldn't happen. So that was a real threat. Yeah. And unfortunately, there's another technique that they use to get what they want.
Which is another commonality when you've got people who are using or codependent using drugs. The moment there are children involved, then you will have child welfare, or over here in the UK, it's social. You know what I mean? It's all part of that.
Right.
That lifestyle wrong choice making mechanism, which gets you into the system. whether it be
Right.
on, recovery, rehabilitation, or they take away your children.
Right.
But
It's also important to say, and I'm sorry, Kevin, for stopping you, but it's important to say that they knew that she wasn't hit because they covered her up with a white sheet as soon as they got her out of the car and kept her covered all the way to the police car and kept her covered under there for quite a long time. So they didn't want anybody seeing her, is what I'm saying.
No,
because
absolutely.
if anybody saw her, they would have noticed she didn't have any marks or bruises on her, and that would just totally discredit what they were saying.
So are we saying that from the moment the police shot and killed Bodhi, they knew they'd made a tragic mistake?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And,
Yeah,
and immediately started to cover up their tracks and falsify
right.
evidence and information?
Canvassing the area and talking to neighbors and telling them what they heard rather than listening to what the neighbors actually heard or didn't hear at all, because there were no witnesses no witnesses that came forward that heard Bodhi say drop the knives before. They said it after the shootings. And then this is the most detrimental move that they did, or the two cops did. It was they moved my son's body 20 feet. And after they shot and killed him, and he wasn't breathing, they moved him in the middle of all of the police casings. So there is a picture from the helicopter looking down, and you can see my son's body, and all the bullet casings are all around him. And we couldn't understand why this was until we found out that they had moved the body 20 feet. And another tactic to make it look like Bodhi was right on top of them, which he wasn't. So I mean that I remember seeing him. I'm thinking, oh my, why are they so close? Why was my son so close? There's no way, because I know, as a parent, your kids. I mean, I know all my kids very well, and I know that my son would have been, quite farther than they would have been, especially because he was farther at the beginning when Gavin pulled up, Gavin Sasser pulled up. So I knew that there was no way that he was standing right there in front of them, with knives, with the guns pointed at him. A lot of these cases, they say, oh, he had a gun, or he had a fake gun, or he had a knife. What person is going to bring a knife to a gunfight or a fake gun to a gunfight? It's ridiculous, but people are believing it.
As the mother of Bodhi, had you ever seen him with knives?
Oh yeah, he had knives at home. That's the first thing I checked. I looked for his knives at home. I thought, oh my God, did he have his knife on him? No, he didn't have his knife on him. His knives were, they were silly knives. They were like the knives that have all the file and all that stuff. The one you open up. He had another knife that his grandfather had given him that he had taped up in duct tape and wrapped it up, put stickers on it. Those are kind of knives he had. He didn't have any knives that he was going to slice anybody open with, or he wouldn't have bought two of the same knives for sure. He was going to buy his drug. He was not going to buy two knives. I guarantee that. And these are the kind of knives that you would find at the gas stations behind the counter. You know what I mean? They look like they're knockoff police issue, which I thought was really, it's the same type of knives that the police officers would have underneath their seats to drop it, drop at situations like this. That's exactly what they are.
And you see, here's the thing. You see, a lot of people who don't actually understand people who are drug dependent is that when you are drug dependent and you don't have a natural source of income, the only thing that you can think of doing when you get money is to score.
Right,
So,
absolutely.
So you get money, right? You don't think of food, you don't think of drink, you don't think of clothes, you think of scoring. So unless he had a real influx of money coming in on a regular basis, I couldn't see how or why he would want to go and purchase two knives that would, in effect, because again, people don't understand the hold that heroin has on you.
Absolutely. Right. He wouldn't have, there's no way he would have bought two knives, two of the same knives, and especially during his addiction. I mean, the other knives were given to him, you know, I mean, they were, you know, passed down, you know, for a Christmas present, a birthday present type of thing. He would have never went out and bought two knives. If he was going to buy anything besides drugs, it would have been clothing, you know. That's all there is to it.
Did they produce the two knives?
No, we saw pictures of them. Yes. And I actually have not seen pictures of them, but my ex-husband has seen pictures of them, and you know they're not knives that you could open up with just a thumb either. They're ones you have to pull open. Yeah, so they're not even they even laid down the wrong knives. And that's all I'm saying. They would have thought about it. They would have done a better job. Those officers.
They didn't have time to think about it.
No. No, they did not.
And they had to act with whatever resources they had about them.
Mm-hmm. That's the stuff you have to look at. You have to go by on these cases. You have to go step by step. You have to look at every last detail, because if you don't, you'll miss out on. There are things that you'll miss out on. Things that that will prove that your son or daughter or husband, wife, didn't do what the officer said. And I think that people automatically assume that the cops are telling the truth. And that, because, you grow up thinking, oh, they're there to protect you. But as soon as you find out that they're not there to protect you, that they're the ones that are doing, majority of the killings, that puts a fear inside you it's nerve-wracking. It's, oh my gosh. So when you see one drive down the road, you think, oh, wait a minute.
Sorry, Shilo. One of the most important observations that you made, which can be quite easily skipped over, is a drug addict will not go and buy two knives the same. They're not going to do it.
Right.
Even if he had one and he found another, they would be different. But he's not going to have two identical knives.
Brand new, right? No.
No.
Not going to happen.
Right?
Nope.
But an officer might have, because he will go out and buy 5 or 6 for that very reason. There was a recent report in Baltimore where officers were found guilty. In fact, one officer had gone state's evidence and given evidence against his fellow officers that they had been buying and supplying BB guns, fake guns, to plant on people that they had shot dead in order to suggest that those people were armed. And this is a case that was ongoing in Baltimore up until a few weeks ago. I'm not even sure what the outcome of that is yet, but that's a live case going on now where another Baltimore police officer is given evidence against his fellow officers that they regularly buy BB guns so that they can place on the possession of a dead body once they've killed it to suggest that person was armed when they fired. So this is nothing new either.
Right. Yeah. Right. No, absolutely not. They've been doing this for years. This is how they do. This is how they work. It's either a knife or the fake gun. Mm-hmm.
Here's the question, Shilo. Prior to Bodie being shot dead by police, what was your awareness of killed by cops status or scenarios?
None. I was not aware of it whatsoever. The last thing be honest with you, and it makes me sick, because this is part of my reaching out now, is that when I saw some on TV, I thought, poor kid. Why would he do that?
Yeah.
Or, that woman, why would she, wow, what happened to her? Thinking that they actually did something, to make it justified for the cops to do this. And that's now, since I'm more aware and I understand the situations and I see that what's going on, that's not the case. And it really makes me feel sick to my stomach that I believe everything that they told me.
And
so
that's when the direction changes. And I suppose since Bodie's death, you're obviously seeing it and hearing about it so often now.
Mm-hmm.
How has that left you feeling?
Oh, well, now when I see and hear it, of course, I automatically, like, for instance, there's a shooting in Portland where they said the young man had a fake gun. Okay, and then they found it in the bushes next to him. So, years ago, I'd been like, oh, why would he bring it? That's ridiculous. Now I know that this is a lie, that boys, young men, especially young black, they do not bring fake guns to real gunfights. I'm sorry. Not going to happen. These boys know. They're raised to know not to do this. Do not brand a gun, in front of a cop, because first of all, they're racially profiled anyways, which is horrible. But then they don't want to bring any more, heat on them. They're just not going to do that. So I want to hear it.
If you can get that, why can't a judge or a jury get it? That's my problem, because we are hearing so many cases where they're claiming that an individual has raised a fake gun, a BB gun, that can cause no damage or little damage whatsoever, right, in the face of a police officer who is carrying a lethal weapon and is licensed to use it and get away with it. And you're going to stand there with a fake gun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Yeah, in some cases, there's several guns pointed at him. They claim it's suicide by cop. Okay, they're not going to go through all that trouble to be, to run and they get caught by the cop for suicide by cop. I'm sorry. If they're going to commit suicide, which is a whole other issue, they're going to do it some other way. They're not going to do it by a cop.
Sorry, I just wanted to take you back a bit. You did mention, right, that when after they had killed Bodhi, that they'd covered up Courtney. Covered up in sheets so that you couldn't actually see her. Just got a friend of ours who's a regular supporter on here as well, Donna Trizese, and she's saying, she's asking me to ask you, did they cover Bodhi's body as well, or was it just the girlfriend's?
They did end up covering Bodhi's body, but Bodhi's body, Courtney didn't see the body. Courtney was around a completely different cul-de-sac than Bodhi was. And in fact, she didn't hear anything from the cops saying anything. Nobody heard anything, but they did eventually cover him up, and when you see the helicopter fly over, he is covered up.
Right.
But I'm not sure how long. It did take quite a while. It did take a little bit. He laid there for a while, yes.
So they left him uncovered for a while, but they covered her up. But his was the body that was exposed and killed.
Right. Yeah. So they totally covered up from completely. They walked her over to the police car, covered up, and she couldn't see anything. And she said, I don't know why they didn't want me to see anything. I said, I don't think they didn't want you to see anything. They didn't want anybody seeing you.
Yeah.
So, and the man that was sat outside her window and kept her there, he said there was no marks on her face. She was not beaten up. Nothing. Yes, she's from crying, yes, but nothing else.
And your eyes would swell if you'd been crying a lot.
Absolutely. Right. And they're black because of her makeup. Yeah. That's the only reason.
So the man that was with her on the flat, what did he see? What did he say?
What man? Oh, no, he didn't see anything. He didn't hear anything. He didn't see anything.
He arrived after.
He stood there, and once he saw the cop run after Bodhi, he went to her and kept her there, thinking that she had done something wrong. And but he didn't. I don't recall him hearing or seeing anything. The only person that actually said that she heard anything was the lady that said that she heard him after the bullets were after the guns were fired. She heard them say and drop the knives, and they asked her again. She said, "No, I'm absolutely certain that they said it afterwards. I thought that was weird at the time." Pretty much what she's saying, that they said that afterwards, but that's when they said it was afterwards. And they were like, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure." So they were trying to get, the grand jury is all BS anyways, and they were trying to get her to doubt herself, and she wasn't doing it. She was like, "No, I'm certain that they said it afterwards." And they did that because they wanted the neighborhood to hear them say it. Because then, people's minds, you think your thoughts and how you see things and you perceive things, they change over time. Mm. And they, as long as you hear it, they figured as long as they heard him say that they could convince the people in the neighborhood that they said it before the gunshots. But they couldn't.
In your pursuit for the truth as to what happened that day, because obviously it's very difficult for you because you wasn't there, and you're now trying to get justice for Bodhi, and you can't speak to him, you can't get the truth out from him. Where has your journey taken you in search of the truth And what have you been able to find out for yourself?
Well, I would tell you that I have seen both of the police officers. In fact, Kevin Carlson, the second officer, showed up. I saw him at a grocery store, and I wasn't sure if it was him or not. And I said, hey, I'm sorry, are you Kevin Carlson? He says, yeah, maybe. And I said, do you know who I am? He said, no. And I said, yeah, you shot my son. And he looked at me and he said, oh, yeah, hey. I said, oh, yeah, hey. And he got in his car and he left. About 10 days to a week, 2 weeks after that, I was driving down to get gas in my car, and he pulled a Yui and he came after me. And I pulled in the gas station because that's where I was going. And I jumped out of the car and he said, ma'am, get back in the car. He said, no, I'm not getting back in the car. I'm good. I'm getting gas. And because there was no reason for him to pull me over. He says, well, I know who you are, Shilo. And I said, well, I know who you are too, Kevin. So he got out of the car and he said, your brights are on. I said, yes, because when my bulbs are out in my car and the brights aren't that bright. And he says, oh, where are you coming down here for? I said, to get gas. And he says, oh, really? And I said, yeah, really? So I turned on my car and I showed him that my gas was on empty. And then I realized, oh my goodness, there's a killer in front of me. My son's killer's in front of me. And I've always, parents think, what would you do when you, you run across the killer and the murderer? And I figured I would just ask him questions and as a mom, you want to be like, why would you do that? You didn't have to do the right thing. That's what I just wanted. That's what I want to say. But instead I was like, oh, you are too close to me. Get the F back. Oh my God, get back, move it back. And the poor gas attendant was like, what is going on? And I just started screaming at him to move and to get away from me. And then he killed my son. And so he was like, okay. And he left and he quickly got in his car and took off. Well, I saw Gavin Sasser at an incident that happened at my ex-husband's house. A cop happened to drive by and stop. And then there was an argument. Then they knew what house they were at. And because they, talked to my daughter and they said Shilo Phelps and Chris Phelps. But yet for some reason they had Gavin Sasser, who was the first cop that showed up to my son's scene, a lieutenant and another officer pull up after we're just about done and in a squad car and jump out of the car. And when I saw him, Gavin Sasser, I'm like, are you kidding me? What is he doing here? Why would you bring him to my house or in my ex's house? This is ridiculous. And I freaked out. And then I yelled, wait a minute. I've got questions. 2 knives? Are you kidding me? Why are you lying? And then they quickly, ran him into the squad car and he took off. And it was great because my 19-year-old daughter is so, she's just very put together when you talk to her. And she says, she walked up to the police officer that was there and says, why would you send him to my house? You went way too far with this. This is ridiculous. This is, you know what this is doing to us? And she really brought it to him. Like, she made it very, made us very human to him. Like, why would you bring the man that shot our brother, my brother, to my house? Do you think this was the right thing to do? Because it wasn't. Yeah. And the cop was backpedaling. So I'm sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent. But so what was the question?
That's understandable.
I apologize.
That's understandable. Look, I've just been going around in circles, really, just really trying to give you an opportunity and a platform to tell this story from your point of view.
Yes, thank you.
It's probably the only opportunity that you'll ever get to just have the whole platform to yourself, to be able to give a real.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's what we do here on Issues Today, and it's the reason why I love doing this show, is that it's the only show that really gives the victims' families a fair opportunity to tell their story uninterrupted and uninterfered with.
Yeah.
Unedited.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
No, and we appreciate you sharing. So you was just talking about your daughter and how she felt when they brought the police to the door, etc. How was the rest of your siblings, including your daughter, how have they handled this? How have they managed this traumatic?
My daughter?
Yeah, this traumatic upheaval in their lives.
Yeah, well, I would tell you that my youngest daughter is, she didn't handle it very well, obviously, because she it's difficult to even understand how it happens. But it's just even more difficult to think that your brother is going to be gone for the next, 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's even more difficult. So I think that she went into kind of seclusion. She didn't talk to anybody for a long time. She dropped out of school because she didn't want to deal with it. And understandably, that was her best friend, her brother. And, at some point she realized that was never going to, that he was never coming home. I think that, the day that my son was killed, we all went down to the the area where he was killed, and we waited. The cops were still there, and we waited. And as they drove out, I asked the cops, why would you kill my son? Are you kidding me? Why would you shoot my son? As the cops drove by, why my boy? What would my boy do that would make you want to shoot him? And my daughter was there, and she said she couldn't understand why this would happen. Knowing that we know who he is, and knowing that, why he ran, and they always ran. He was never a threat to anyone. That just kind of, it made it more, it wasn't real still at that point, for her especially. I think that it became really real when we buried him, when we put him in the ground. That's when it was the most devastating, because we knew at that point that he was gone. And from that point on, my daughter and I didn't see each other for a year almost, because that was the most pain I felt was when I saw her, because the three of us were very close. I mean, we went to coffee, dinner. I mean, and we always made sure that we connected and that we saw each other, usually kind of on a daily basis, actually. And so when he was gone, we didn't have that third person. We couldn't even communicate without him. That's how close we were. He was kind of like he was like our rock. He would kind of level us out a little bit. We'd, like, oh, let's go do this. And like, okay, guys, come on. We can't be spending that kind of money. Or, he was very level headed. And so when we got together, we were just kind of like, looked at each other like, okay, now what? And that took a good, we're still working on that. Actually, we're still, fighting that, that part of our relationship. We're very close, and we'll always remain very close, but there are still sometimes really close makes it really worse.
Mm. So where does his father fit into any of this?
Well, Bodhi has a biological father, and then he also has another father that raised him. And, it's funny, after he was shot, the first thing is that your family, not everybody believes that he was in the right, and not everybody believes that. They believe that, that he must have done something that would have warranted this, because, again, they were raised to believe that cops were, always in the right. They protect us. So, and my grandfather, and I'll be honest, I don't talk to very many of my family members anymore, because it was just either it was too traumatic to talk to them, or because they have opted not to listen to what I know and what's come forward, and they just automatically assume. So,
the unfortunate thing is, Shilo. The unfortunate thing is, there is a perception that people have with people who are drug addicted or drug dependent.
Right.
There is a perception that people have where it comes to law enforcement and law enforcement officers. There is a perception that people have when it comes to authority and how authority deal with things, and how the media portrays that. Majority of people are brought up to know the difference between right and wrong, and believe that the police are here to help us, and they're our friend in the community.
Right.
And even my mother was one that would believe that if I've been put in the back of a police van, I must have done something wrong to get there. My mother would never believe in a million years that there were racist cops out here in Britain that would pick up a black kid, throw him in the back of a police van, beat him up and throw him out on the next corner for no reason. But that happened many times where I grew up.
Right.
And my mother never believed me until the day she was wrongfully arrested when the police was chasing me. And I was hiding in the house, and she didn't know. I didn't tell her. I only came out when I heard the confrontation taking place on the front door, and I came downstairs to stop my mum and dad from getting arrested and getting involved in an argument that didn't really concern them, because it was me that committed a crime and it was me that the police were after. When I realised that my mother and father were not going to get away with what the police were looking for me for, I came out of my hiding place and gave myself up. And when I did that, they promptly arrested my mother, claiming that she must have known I was there all the time and was hiding me. So I think the charge was obstructing an officer in the execution of his duty, to which she was found guilty. Now, my mother was my mother was the kind who, if I came home and told her that I'd got the cane or the slipper at school, she would whack me again. If I came home and told her that the police had arrested me, I'd get a beating. Right? So my mother was raised to respect law and law enforcement officers, or police as we have them here in the UK, and would never, ever give me right against a police officer until that day. And the strange thing, the truth is, majority of people are like that, because if we didn't believe that, then we'd just be living in anarchy. And nobody wants to live in anarchy, and I understand that. But the deep-rooted corruptive mentality of police right across the board is what's causing the division in our communities. The propaganda that keeps peoples apart, fighting and arguing with one another, when what we should be doing is coming together and saying, we don't want to be living like this, or ruled over in this way, or by people who are not integral enough to wear the badge, because integrity is a big thing for me.
Absolutely.
You know, and there is no integrity in policing anymore. No. We've often said it on this show. Where's the community cop gone? The guy that knows your mother and father, the guy that knows the family, that guy that knows the local barber, the guy that knows the local gossip, the guy that knows the local hoodlums, the guy that knows the big guns.
Right.
Where's that guy gone?
Yeah, the guy keeping peace, right.
Because law enforcement officers are meant to be peacekeepers, not war makers. And what we've got is a consistent outbreak of war on the streets of where we live, because we've got police coming out like militarized. It's a war zone.
Right.
So how do we still teach our children to respect the law for what it is, but be aware of the law officer who is corrupt?
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a good question. I think that the only way we can do it is to educate our communities about what's going on, and so they understand the severity of the situation. And then once the communities all pull together, then that's going to force the cops to do the right thing. As long as we're separate and we remain separate, and we don't allow each other the opportunity to discuss these situations or work together, then we're still going to have problems. You see these with all these nonprofit organizations that are kind of almost fighting each other. We have to, at some point, we have got to come together, because it's going to get far worse before it gets better if we don't. And that plays along with understanding, or the respect for the officers. I have respect for the doctors and nurses, and I have respect for officers. I understand what their job is. There are situations where they're, that they should be protected. It's scary, but it does not mean every situation. It does not mean all the shootings are like that either. It's kind of like how would I say this? It'd be like a good analogy maybe would be like a doctor going into a surgery, and it's becoming an emergency. Okay, but not every surgery is going to be like that. Yeah. Something, and they need to treat. They treat them as they go. They don't necessarily go in there and all gung ho for every surgery to be an emergency. Yeah. And that's what the cops need to do.
Here's the thing. there is only one industry for me that deserves to be able to use, honestly, the terminology, I was in fear of my life.
Right.
And that's the firefighter.
Right.
These guys go into burning buildings to save lives.
Right.
And I would imagine every single time they go into one of these burning buildings that are about to collapse, they're going in there knowing that they might not come out. There's a possibility that they might not come out. They're going to go in there and try and save a life, but they might not come out. But they go in there regardless.
Right, exactly.
They don't stand there and go, well, let's just wait until the building stops looking like it's going to fall down. Let's wait until it looks like the fire is not as bad as it looks now. Let's wait until, it's safer to go inside. Majority of firefighters put on their uniform and they go into the fire. And yet we've got trained men and women who are fully armed with all the resources local law enforcement can issue. And the first words that come out of their mouth is, I was in fear of my life.
Right. Ridiculous.
And I find that such a ridiculous, laughable travesty that it's still been allowed to be used in a court of law for qualified immunity and all other sorts of first defense lines that support a police officer that has killed an unarmed individual.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's because they haven't set a standard for the use of force. They need to do that. They need to have a standard. They need to have the guidelines that they go by. And rather than just being allowed to say that they fear for their lives, they need to have a standard. I mean, there are certain things that they're supposed to go by. Like if there is a truck or something that's blocking them, to whoever they're in fear of, that they can block themselves. They're not allowed to shoot, but they do. I mean, it happens all the time. So there needs to be a set standard, and that does not allow them to shoot everyone. And there's like a use of force continuum that they need to go by. It needs to be a federal standard, I think, because it's a federal policy that says that they're allowed to fear for their lives and shoot. That's it's not every department is allowed to go ahead and have a standard, their own kind of standard, their own guidelines, but there needs to be one federal standard that every police department goes by.
Since
that way there's no confusion.
Since you've encountered this journey that you've been on, since you've witnessed and experienced the loss of your own loved one in the midst of this corruption and criminality, what's your opinion on law enforcement and its statutes now?
Well, I'll be honest. After my son was first shot and killed, I had to leave Gresham and I left for almost a year because every time I saw a cop car that said Gresham on it, I wanted to ram my car into it. So I didn't think that was healthy. So I left for a year, and so I could fight, far away. And then I came back once I was able to deal with it a little better. You never actually deal with it. I mean, it's always there in the back of your head. Always. Well, actually, it's usually right in front of you. But it's hard to explain if you've never lost, a child. I've lost a parent, and I've lost a grandparent, a parent, and that's devastating. But losing a child is a whole nother ball game. And I hope nobody has to. I don't wish it upon my worst enemy. I don't wish it upon anybody. It's the worst thing. But now when I see officers, what we like to do is my daughter, if we see them out walking around, my daughter and I like to stop them and question them about how they do things and what they think is right. And we've been known to videotape a couple of them, as we're talking. But now I'm more interested in seeing how what their views are as far as what's happening. And a lot of them will tell me that no cop ever wants to shoot anyone. that's the worst thing ever. You know, and because I'm sure, I mean, if Gavin Sasser and Kevin Carlson don't go home every day and fall asleep seeing my son dying in front of them, then I can't imagine they're good people. You know, that would be something that would, I don't care how much you're trained, even vets come back and they see this in their, you know, in their dreams every night. They must see my son dying every night. And I would assume that's eating at them, you know, and the only thing that's going to make it any better is for them to come forward and tell the truth, honestly. You know,
the Bible says, if you know the truth will set you free. Right,
exactly. And you know, and when I see these men, and they're young men. I mean, they've actually changed the entire course of their life. These young men they've done this to themselves, you know, and I'll be honest with you, I blame the police officers, but I really blame the department. The department's the one that set the standard, you know, and the department's the one who gives the training. If the department would have given better training or set a different standard, then this wouldn't have happened. Yeah. That there was the chief of the department at the time said if it was on her watch, this would never have happened. So, and you know, unfortunately, she wasn't there. It wasn't her watch at that time, but it kind of shows you kind of what their what you know.
Yeah, you're just looking at the insight from another angle, really, from another perspective, and somebody with a bit more experience, somebody with a bit more integrity would have dealt with it totally different. We're coming to the end of the show, Shilo. We are coming to the end of the show, Shilo. Is there anything that people could do if they want? Yes, 2 hours flies by, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Is there anything that you want to add before we finish? And more importantly, how can people help if they want to support justice for Bodie Phelps?
Yes. Get involved. I mean, in your community, your state, get involved. Know what's going on. Know what's going on with your policing. It's very important because you don't know. Unfortunately, I had no idea. I never thought my son was going to be shot. But you don't want it to be your son. And the only thing you can do to make sure that doesn't happen is to get involved. Make sure that the laws are in place and things are set. You know, all the way down to grand jury that will stop these type of instances.
Well, Shilo, all I can say is thank you very much for appearing on the show and trusting us to share your pain on World Jam Global Radio's Issues Today. And we just look forward to linking up with you again and doing an update further down the road when we've got some more information, if we have, and maybe just involving you in some other stuff that we're going to be doing in the future as well.
Absolutely.
Just know that you've got our love, you've got our prayers, and you've got our support. And is there a website? Is there a place where people can go to if they want to support Justice for Bodie? Yes,
Facebook. On Facebook, there's Justice for Bodie Phelps. We also have a nonprofit, which we just got our SEC 3 filing, or we're working towards that actually. And it's Pacific Northwest Family Circle, and it supports the victims of police brutality and violence throughout the Northwest. And you're more than welcome to. We have a website, PacificNorthwestFamilyCircle.com, and you can go to and kind of get more information about the shootings out in this area. And if you have, we're always, of course, accepting donations, and donations go right to all the victims, and families.
Amen. Well, listen, once again, I must thank you, Shilo, for sharing your story. Again, take this opportunity to thank my co-producer, Teresa, for all the work that she does in the background, keeping me on my toes, that's for sure. And until we all get to meet again, same time, same place, next Saturday.
Shilo. Thank you, Teresa.
For another edition of Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio. My name's Kervin Julian. This is Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio. And we're out of here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Imperial Lounge presents a night called
Reggae Dancehall by the Beach. To be held at Imperial Lounge, 2 to 14 High Street, Margate Seafront, Kent, CT9 118. To be held on the first Saturday of each month. Your host DJ Matt. Also rotated DJs, Roddy Boone, DJ Happy,
and Younger General.
Doors open 8 p.m. till late. Free entry all night. Music policy, reggae, dancehall, and a touch of soul. On the first Saturday of each month,
Reggae dancehall by the beach.
At the Imperial Lounge Bargate. Do remember you can also get VIP and shisha booking. More info on the World Jam Global website. That's www.worldjamglobal.com. Also www.imperialloungebargate.co.uk. See you there.
Look back and use them, you just the right thing you doing. Rebellious like 1, 2, 3, swing it.
Do you have an old sound tape or your favorite cassette tape that you want converted to CD or MP3 format? Do you need a demo CD, radio ad, a DJ or even a sound system for your wedding, birthday or special occasion? Then why not get in contact with KTR Records on 07931 152 448 or check out our website on www.ktrrecords.com. We have been in business since 2004 and also undertake community projects. So for your remixes, doublets and all your sound editing needs, why not contact KTR Records, official sponsor of World Jam Global Radio. KTR Records, coming your way.
I was terrified about sharing the vulnerabilities of people with difficulties reading and spelling words. However, I can see the value in sharing, and I have taken the time to make some notes about this in my book, Dyslexic: The Silent Difference. You can get your copy now at www.a1tribe.com or amazon.com or amazon.co.uk. Thank you again, everyone, for your support.
You see, it's here. You see. New feature coming from World Jam Global Radio in 2018. World Jam Global Top 10. To vote for your favorite artist, go to twitter.com/WorldJamGlobal or facebook.com/WorldJamGlobal. So pick the right track where you want to have in your car, at your house, a rock. At them.
Do you like music like this?
Great music all the time.
Or like this?
The music you love.
Maybe this.
Great music that makes you want to turn up the volume loud.
Or life chat like this.
Especially where human life is concerned. Surely, sooner or later, people will realize that lives actually matter.
Then you're in the right place. Keep it locked to World Jam Global, where music is harmony.
Music 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Yeah, you're a World Jam. Hotter than them.
See live schedule.